So here I am in a race with the 1968 Pontiac GTO. Paul and I are southbound on Yonge Street just south of Oak Ridges. We are on our way home from up north. We split a small 2-bedroom house on Younghurst Road in Richmond Hill. That's where we're headed. Paul owns a 1967 light blue Mercury Cougar. It has a 289 2-barrel carburetor and an automatic transmission. The Mercury Cougar was introduced in 1967 as a luxury sports car. It was based on a slightly stretched Mustang chassis with a few luxury upgrades. It had hideaway headlights which gave the front grille a very long clean look. It also had sequencing taillights, just like the ones on the 1964 and 65 Ford Thunderbirds. The 1967 Cougar had performance characteristics very similar to its cousin, the 1967 Ford Mustang. General Motors also produced several direct competitors for your midsize performance dollar in 1967. They included the Chevrolet Camaro SS and the Pontiac Trans Am, among others. These new midsize high-performance cars are known as pony cars, a classification of car first used in 1964 to describe the newly designed Ford Mustang. Pony cars are highly customizable, very desirable and affordable. They truly are in a class of their own. We were doing about 60 miles per hour when a 1968 GTO came up beside us in Paul's Cougar. The GTO driver looked over at Paul. They made eye contact. Unspoken signals were passed back and forth and the race was on. The GTO immediately pulled ahead. As the speed increased, the Cougar was holding its own. We seemed to be maintaining our position relative to each other. The GTO seemed to have had better acceleration in the beginning, but the higher the speed, the more equal the acceleration became between the two vehicles. We were on that GTO's ass. He was about 150 feet ahead of us. Both cars were still accelerating, and we had about 10 miles to go to Richmond Hill. Paul's Cougar had a clock-style speedometer. The numbers on the speedometer only went to 120 miles per hour, but the little ticks went all the way to 140. At 140 miles per hour there was a little peg. It was designed to stop the arm of the speedometer from going right around. Paul had his car to the boards. It became apparent that the GTO was pulling ahead slowly. Very slowly, but nevertheless, it was still pulling ahead. Both cars were giving their all. Highway conditions were excellent. There were no curves or hills on this stretch of Yonge Street. The Cougar was top-ending at 137 miles per hour. According to the car's own speedometer, the speedometer's arm was 3 ticks off the peg. The peg indicated 140 miles per hour. I remember the car felt like it was floating. At those speeds you don't seem to feel the road in the same way as you do at slower speeds. The race continued until Richmond Hill, with the GTO pulling ahead very slowly the whole time. Both cars slowed down as they reached the hill. They cruised through town fairly close to each other. At Crosby Avenue in the center of Richmond Hill, the Cougar and the GTO pulled up side by side at a red light. The guy in the GTO rolled down his passenger side window and yelled, "396 4-barrel 4-speed." He was referring to his car's engine and transmission. Paul yelled back, "289 2-barrel automatic." The guy in the GTO yelled again, "No way, 351." The driver of the GTO did not want to believe that a car with such a small engine gave him such a good run. He wanted to believe his powerful 396 would easily outperform a small 289. When he shouted back at us, "No way, 351," it maintained his belief in the performance of his 396. At the same time, he believed he had beaten a competitor with a more equal-sized engine. He recognized the distinctive design of the 1967 Cougar as a Ford product. He then shouted back to us what he thought to be an appropriate Ford engine for that car, and that was the 351. The 1968 GTO is a full-size muscle car. It is big and heavy. The General Motors 396 is a high-performance, big-block, powerful engine. The 1967 Mercury Cougar is a lighter-weight pony car. The Ford 289 V8 is a lightweight, small-block, high-performing engine. The engines and weights of the two cars were probably the reason the GTO and Cougar were as closely matched as they were. If Paul had had the extra horsepower of a Ford 351, he may have beaten the GTO. Fortunately for the GTO driver, the Cougar only had a 289 engine with a 2-barrel carburetor. In 1967 there was an optional 4-barrel carburetor for the 289. That option may have made a difference in the outcome of the race, but that is only speculation. The lights changed from red to green and the GTO squealed off. Paul and I pulled off at regular speed. There was no way Paul was going to attempt an off-the-line street race with the 396 GTO 4-gear. His little 289 automatic 2-barrel Cougar wouldn't have a chance. The 351 was available in the Mercury Cougar, but not until 2 years later in the 1969 model year. Paul's car was a 1967. 137 miles per hour is the fastest speed I have ever ridden in a car at.